The literature is rife with evidence that today's workplace wellness programs are largely ineffective at either helping employees become healthier or generating measurable returns for employers. Many programs are implemented on the advice of third-party vendors without understanding what employees truly want or need. And another often overlooked area that most wellness programs fail to address is the underlying issue of unsupportive workplace cultures. Here to discuss this with us today is Mari Ryan. Mari's firm, Advancing Wellness, helps companies create healthy, thriving workplaces by collecting and analyzing actionable data to create strategic employee well-being plans that work. She regularly speaks on topics related to employee productivity, well-being strategy, and employee and personal engagement. And Mari's recent book, The Thriving Hive, was the winner of the 2019 Axiom Business Book Award. It's a pleasure to have you here today, Mari.
Well, thanks, Jim, for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here.
Mari, your message seems to be that putting employee well-being first can revitalize a company. Talk about some of the benefits of a people-centric workplace.
Well, when we think about what it means to have a people-centric workplace, it's really a place where we're creating an environment where employees can thrive. Mm-hmm. And when employees can thrive, they are going to be there to do their best work. When they do their best work, that means your customers are the recipients of that. And in the long run, when employees really are in a situation where they feel like it's an environment where they're cared for, where they're contributing, they're recognized, then the organization can meet their business objectives. Because as you and I both know, fundamentally, an organization cannot meet its business objectives without its workforce.
Then why aren't more companies adopting initiatives and programs that deliver this kind of competitive advantage?
Yeah, I would think that I think it's a paradigm change for many organizations to really think about what it means to care for their people. And they perhaps just haven't moved along to change their thinking about this. And until they do, I think they're some organizations still function in the old command and control kind of dictatorial, do as I say kind of workplace, which doesn't necessarily send the right message to people about being cared for and being appreciated.
And I suspect many business leaders get distracted by other issues that seem more urgent. Is that what you think?
Well, I think in many cases, and it depends on the size of the business.
Sure.
For small businesses, they're just, one step ahead of where they need to be in order to run their business. Right. So, they're just watching, the path immediately in front of them. In larger organizations, some of those executives are looking much further out. They're looking at, what they need to be thinking about in, 2 years and 3 years and 5 years, and watching what's going on in the environment. And so I think it's just that it's how do you take the time to really focus on this and make it a priority. And I think that's really perhaps what's missing in some cases.
And I think a lot of CEOs and a lot of business leaders don't think of this as strategic, do they?
Well, if they don't think about their people as being strategic, then they're going to have trouble meeting those business objectives. If you don't think about the people aspect, the talent management, and what is it going to take to have the right workforce doing the work you need in a productive manner, that's an essential part of any strategic plan in an organization. It's why with some of the clients I'm working with these days, where we're starting to see in their strategic goals, the goal of being a best place to work, or, having some, wording along those lines that really says, this is a great place to work and we want our people to feel that way.
What role does workplace culture play in participation levels and the success of specific programs?
Well, culture is just such an important element of what happens in the workplace. Culture is so much about the norms and the values, the behaviors, the rituals that take place in an organization. And as a result, culture really can drive that sense of well-being, the making sure that the resources are there, how people are treated and included in things, and how the leaders act as role models in that situation. Organizations that do a really good job and have high participation rates in their well-being programs are ones where well-being and wellness are just a part of how they do business.
You emphasize a strategic approach to workplace well-being that involves whole person well-being, where employees, not clients or customers, come first. But can you say more about what you mean and how you've seen this idea work in real-world companies?
Well, it goes back to a comment I made earlier about you can't achieve your business objectives without your workforce. The people that are working in your organization that are expected to be able to, help meet those business objectives, to look after the people, to look after the customers, those are the organizations in which there's going to be success. And examples in the real world, we see this a lot. Some of my favorite books on topics related to this, Bob Chapman, who's the CEO of Barry Waymiller, classic example of this. Whole Foods, John Mackey, when he was CEO, was all about taking care of the people. There's a lot of examples of this.
Yeah, and Costco's a great example of that too.
Exactly.
You stress the importance of assessing the employees in their workplace. Could you tell us about the types of data that you collect and how it helps you assess an organization's current state and better plan for strategic well-being initiatives?
So we collect both qualitative and quantitative data. We do a series of interviews with senior leaders. We have focus groups with employees. We sometimes do surveys with employees if we need to fill the gaps where there may not be existing data. And then we just look across all of the information that might be available within that organization, healthcare claims, workers' comp claims. We look at the physical workplace. We ask questions that lead us to understanding the culture. We look for those cultural artifacts. Mm-hmm. And all of that together can give us a really good snapshot of the point from which we're starting to then be able to know where we have to make modifications or add programming or make changes to policies, whatever it might be, in order to have that strategic plan for the well-being.
It's a pretty common mistake, isn't it, by companies that rely on third-party vendors or their own idea of what employees need rather than asking them?
Oh, so often. It's crazy that, if you want to know what people want, you have to ask them. Yep. And yet that seems like it's just a foreign thing. And it's important to be able to do this in a meaningful way. I often hear when I'm working with organizations that, we can't send another survey. Well, so people are over-surveyed. Well, we need to really understand, what are those surveys doing? Are they meaningful? And that's why we often do focus groups, because I can hear things in a focus group that I would never, ever get in a survey.
Yeah. And you must have to guarantee some kind of confidentiality or somehow encourage them to come out and say the things that have to be said. That must be difficult.
Well, oftentimes just the fact that I'm an external third party actually provides that safe environment. Yeah. So that they know that they're not going to be, no comment is going to be directly attributed to any individual. We take notes. We actually sometimes even record the sessions for accuracy to be able to make sure we're capturing, the ideas, but we're really pulling the themes out. So it's occasionally we pull out a direct quote, but mostly it's the themes that we're looking for.
Right.
And that's really, that makes for a fairly safe environment.
Do you ever ask them whether they have bad bosses?
Well, not exactly worded that way, but we might ask questions that would help us understand what might make the workplace a better experience for them. And perhaps that might lead to some comments about managers or supervisors. So it's just kind of how, we might work some wording around that.
What have you seen about the true cost of high turnover for employers?
Well, turnover is a huge issue, and especially in an economy like this where unemployment rate is really low, that people are starting to really change jobs because they feel that they have more opportunity to be able to do that. There's a lot of costs associated with turnover, and it's not just the replacement cost or the time without that person in the job. There's, the pressure that this puts on other members of the team who have to pick up the work while that person's gone, while there's nobody in that role. There's the disruption to the team in and of itself, especially if this happens to be, a top performer who leaves. There can be impact to morale. There's a lot of different elements that can be impacted. So turnover is something that, is one of the things when we think about well-being in the workplace that we're really hoping to have an impact on. Because if we can make sure people are engaged and enjoying the work that they're doing, feeling cared for, feeling appreciated, then hopefully they're going to stay in that role.
The dollar cost of turnover is really rather substantial, isn't it?
Huge.
Your book, The Thriving Hive, it's a parable that shows how leadership plays a critical role in success of any organization. What are the practical applications or key takeaways of that book for CEOs and other business leaders?
Well, in writing this book, what I really wanted to do, and it's written in the parable format, so it's a story, is to really be able to encourage people to think about how we create cultures and workplaces where people feel cared for, where they really feel like they're, and this is, Bob Chapman does a great job of talking about this in his book of Everybody Matters, is treating people like their family. That every person who comes to work is someone's precious family member. And it's our responsibility as employers to make sure that we send them home better than they came in the morning. And when people are thriving, the organization will thrive.
In general, can you sum up the basic rules of thumb for what not to do in creating thriving, productive workplaces, or conversely, what should companies do?
Three key tenets, I think, to this are, one is purpose. So as an organization, having a purpose that's clearly stated, that is the motivator for individuals to really feel that this is something that they can contribute to, and it's outward facing. It's something that has an impact on the larger world. In the Alive Hive in my book, the purpose of that that organization or that beehive was for the bees to pollinate the plants so that people would have fruits and vegetables and healthy foods to eat. As opposed to the dive hive where the purpose was profit.
And it seems like more and more workers in today's workforce, particularly millennials and Gen Zers, are looking for purpose in their work, in their workplace. As the line blurs between life and work life, this becomes more and more important, doesn't it?
It really does. And in some ways, these younger generations are younger than us, are pushing us to really think about how they feel connected to the purpose of these organizations. So that's where I think, we're really starting to see that people want to feel that connection. They want to feel that they're doing meaningful work. And that's really the key to that.
That makes
but
sense.
the other two pieces that go with this are values and culture. And values work in support of the purpose, but the values are, that underlying way in which the organization operates. And when it has values at its core, those are the guiding principles for the organization. So while we have this goal of whatever the purpose may be, it's those values that are going to guide that. And they also work in service of the culture. So the culture has to be such that, again, the culture being the norms, the behaviors, the rituals, the assumptions that exist within an organization. All of those work to be able to create an environment where people can feel like they belong, they feel like they're cared for, they are recognized, and that they can be part of something that's bigger than themselves. And when those three pieces come together, that's a thriving hive.
That's great. Good advice, Mari. And on that note, we will conclude our discussion. Mari, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. This was fun.